we are going to talk a little bit about setup. So if there's anything then still not working, then we can discuss it there. My name is Birgitte. I work at HPC2N. And I don't know if my colleagues would like to introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, I'm Diana. I'm working actually at UPPMAX. Been giving this course together with Birgitte and Pedro for a few years now. Very happy to be here, and I hope you'll enjoy it.
Yes, and my name is Pedro Ojeda. I'm working at HPC2N as an application expert, and I am also teaching the training courses.
So I will share my screen. Okay, I will first go through some course info. And I hope the slides will behave this time because something got broken a couple days ago on HackMD. But we'll see. So first, this course, it's an introduction to Git. And it will actually be an introduction also in the beginning just to version control, but the focus will be very strongly on Git. And the instructors have just presented themselves. It's Pedro and me from HPC2N and Diana from UPPMAX. We will have a mixture of lectures and hands-ons, and it's split into modules, and it will consist of 5 half-days. The lectures will be done in this main Zoom room, and the modules will mostly have hands-ons. That is not so much here in the first ones, but all the later modules will have hands-ons. And we will do them here in the main Zoom room, but we can create breakout rooms if anyone needs to go to a help room and show their screen or things like this. We can also create a silent room if someone would like to work undisturbed by other people talking. Most of the hands-on will be done locally on your own computer, but Thursday, Friday, there will be some done on GitHub, and on Friday, most of them will be done there for the teamwork session. If there's a problem using your own computer, backup solution is logging into, for this one, it was Tetralit in case you have an account, but you can use any other HPC center that you have an account at if you cannot use your own computer. It will work very much the same. They are all running Linux, so it will look the same on all of them. And they should all have Git installed already. And yeah, as I said, in the teamwork module on Friday, you will work in small groups using GitHub. And we will set up GitHub accounts later in the course if you don't have them already. When they're hands-on, you can just ask if there's anything you need help with, of course. As I said, we are recording this, so if you ask during the lectures, you may get recorded. So keep your camera and microphone off if you don't want to be recorded. When we have hands-ons, anything that gets recorded there, I will cut away completely so that disappears. You don't need to worry about that. You can ask in the chat, of course, but it easily gets cluttered. So the recommended option is to use the Q&A page, the question and answer page. You can get the link from the important information page, and maybe one of my colleagues can also share it in the chat. And if you write questions there during the lectures, then we'll answer them as quickly as possible. That also has the advantage that it will be there later for you to go back to and look at and see if there was anything. And if you are on these slide pages, you could scroll down to get access to them in text form. There's this small symbol here. Someone raised a hand. I just saw it pop up. Let's see what the chat said. It wasn't there. Does anyone want to ask a question? Okay, I will oh,
No, it says it was a mistake. Yeah.
okay, no worries. So the overview is first we had the optional installation help. We have had that. And now we are doing the course info. And then we will go on to introduction and setup. And that is configuring your Git. Then motivation. Why do we use version management? And then comes basic commands, part 1 and 2. And as you can see, that is creating and cloning repositories, adding files, committing, etc. And there will be hands-ons for this. The second day, we will have basic concepts, talk about a little bit what is happening behind the scenes on Git, which can very much help in understanding what is going on and especially fixing problems that often occurs when you're using Git, especially together with people. Then we will look at traversing the commit tree. Again, this will help you go back and forth during your commits and maybe pick out an older one if a newer one had some problems and things like this. But we will talk much more about that. And that continues into the third day, where we also will start talking about branches, merges, and conflicts. And that continues on the fourth day, on Thursday, where there will also be a short introduction to SSH keys and how to use GitHub. We will set up the SSH keys then. And then we go to working with remotes, remote repositories. There's pull, push, fetch, and things like this. And then on the fifth day, on Friday, we will do the teamwork sessions with GitHub. And there will also be time, hopefully, for some catch up from the previous days. Okay, so this was the introduction. And I will continue to a different one that I cannot get it. Okay, like that. There is a bar at the top when you have Zoom running, which means that it's very difficult to click on anything at the top. So let's go to the setup. And here, some of this you just went through. If you were for the optional help session, or otherwise maybe you read this before, or maybe you already had it set up. But as mentioned, we'll use Git from the command line. That's how you normally use it in HPC centers, and it's also very easier to understand what is going on when you actually see the output of the commands this way. So on Mac and Linux, this will usually be how you use it in a terminal window. On Windows, you will be using Git Bash. There are graphical tools that you can use later if you want to. And there's, as you maybe saw when you installed, there's a basic GUI with Git SCM. Otherwise, there are these here. And to install and set up Git, you install it if you haven't already. And now you should open a terminal window and create a repository with Git init, and then set your name and email with git config. I'm going through this in a moment more. And it's important to set name and email because that will be used by Git to register who was making a commit. And it's important when you're doing teamwork, but it also means that it has to be set in order to use it really. And we will test it by creating a file, and then you will add the file to this small repository you just created, and then commit it. And then you can do a git log to see that all works well. After this, we will clone the course materials. So this is installing and setting it up. If you already installed it, I'm going to assume that now, so I'm going to go through this and I'm not going to talk about this. I'm just going to jump past this. But if you haven't installed it yet and you need help, then you can read through this or you can ask us. So when during the git install, you can pick the name of the primary branch. It will probably be named master. GitHub uses main, but we are probably going to use master in this course, so just leave it at default. When we go to the GitHub session, it will use main, but I will talk about how you can change it to whatever you want to, or, well, we'll see. Anyway, regardless of which you pick, you should stick to one to avoid problems when you push to a repo. And we are not going to talk about how to change it in GitHub now. We'll do that later, but there is instructions also on this link here. So you could all open a terminal window now, and I can do it as well. Just here for a moment. I'll just say git -- version. And then it tells me I have git version 2.34.1. So now it is time to configure it. And since I already ran these, I cannot rerun them without changing it again. So when you have this terminal window, either git bash or on Mac or Linux, open a terminal window. You can check git is installed as it should, but git -- version. So try do that. And when you have done that, do this here, git config -- global user.name, and then in these apostrophes, your name, and then the same for user.email, and then again in apostrophes or quotation marks, I think they're called, your email address. So let's take a few minutes and make sure everyone has this set up. So I will give you a couple minutes and please. Okay, it looks like it's going well. So I'm going to continue and see if make sure you get this to work here. And after you have set that, you should set the editor as well. And you do it the same way with git config -- global, and then you say core.editor, and then the name of the editor. If you are on Linux, you could use Nano, Vim, or Emacs. If you are on Windows, I believe now you can just write notepad ++.exe, or I think actually it sounded like Windows asked this during the setup, so I'm going to assume that it already is using that as default. But otherwise, GitHub has documentation at this link here where you can set your favorite editor for whatever OS you have. So this is a good idea to do, because otherwise it will ask you each time you are doing a commit. Okay, let us test the Git installation. So let's try create a it's moving slowly here. Okay, my computer is slowed down a little bit. So let's try and create a directory. And I don't actually know how you do it in git bash on Windows. Pedro, can you use mkdir there, or how is that working there?
So in git bash, I'm not running git bash. I'm running the WSL.
Okay, but do you know
Windows.
how it works in git bash? Do you know if it's possible to do mkdir?
Let me try this, but I think it's possible because I'm running Git bash in VS
Yeah.
Code. Yeah.
Okay, in that case
Yes.
it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this should work for all of you, this. So create a directory that we're going to use for our first test repo. So I am going to do this. I'm going to call it test repo, like this. Then I will change to this test repo. And then I'm going to create a file. I will just use the command touch, which just creates a file. You can also create it with an editor, but now I'm just going to do this. You will see there's now this one file. It doesn't contain anything, it's just an empty file. And now I will create a initialize my repository, the one I'm in here, and I will stage the first file. So we will talk very much more about this in a short while, but when we go to the basic commands. But right now, this is just in order to test that your Git is actually working. There are some questions.
Could you please make the font a bit larger on the terminal window?
Yes, of course. Sorry. Is this better? Do you want it larger? Like this?
It's okay for me, but please write in the chat if you would prefer even larger.
Can you please make little more larger? It's a bit small.
Like this? Or more?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, a bit more if possible. Otherwise, this is fine. Yeah, this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to initialize this repository. And since I am inside of it, I'm just going to write git init. So you saw here, I created a repository with mkdir and whatever name you pick. Then I change to the repository. I create a file. I just use touch. You can use an editor, but this just creates an empty file. I just ran the Linux command ls just to show what I had in my directory. It shows I have the file test.txt. And now I'm going to initialize this repo here, test repo. And it gives you some information. It says I'm going to use master as the name for the initial branch. And this was what you could change. I'm just going to ignore it for now. And to configure the branch, you need to set these things if you want to change it. So this is just an information if you want to change the name of it. I'm just going to leave it. And it has initialized an empty Git repository. And inside of this repository, we have the file here, and I'm now going to stage it, add it, by saying git add test.txt. And it doesn't say anything, it just accepts it. And now I'm going to commit it. This will be something that Pedro talks about in a very short time, but this is just to test that all is working as it should. So we commit it like this. There's also a shortcut in order to give the message on the line, but now we're going to do it this way. It opens my editor, and I am using Vim, and I'm just going to say, this is my first test of Git or something. So I am going to save it. It was actually using nano. And I'm going to say this here. And then it's created this first commit. And as you can see here now, this is what the message was. This is my first test of Git. So let's continue. And now we are seeing what's inside of this here. I'm going to open it again. I'm saying git log. and git log will list the commits we have made. And we only have made this one here.
There is
This
a
is
question, Birgitte. Excuse me.
Yes, okay. What is the question? There was a question.
Yeah, someone raised the hand.
Okay, we can take it in a little while, or you can write it on the Q&A also. But this is the commit hash, which Diana will talk about when we go through traversing the commit tree, and also explain what these things mean. Right now, this is the head pointer pointing to the branch master, the tip of that. This is the author of this commit, which is me. This is the email I had set. This is the date it was made. And this is the message. It's good to make good messages because this is what you use when you're trying to find out which commit you want to roll back to if you have made some mistake. So you want to be able to find the right one. So it's important to make good messages. Okay. And if you see this, then Git is configured as it should be. And I think we should take 2 minutes and let people go through this themselves. And I should probably just open my window here again, so you can see what I did. We have now tested the Git installation, and it should be working. If you got the commit made, then try type git log, and you see some text like similar to this. Then it's working. So let us go to download the course materials. And there is some course materials which you will download from the course GitHub. And since this is Git, I suggest that you actually clone it. But the other option is to download the zip file. But let's try to git clone. So I will go to the course repository, which is this one here. It looks like this. And since we are working on porting the files to GitHub pages, then there are some files here you should just ignore. But the material you need is this, git materials.zip. README contains this information here, which is an explanation of how you download it. And under lectures are the lecture files, the ones that we're going through now as PDFs and as markdowns. You can also see them on the HackMD, which is what we are using here otherwise. But let's try get the course materials. You see this green code button here. If you push that, then you need to clone this here. And you need to make sure it's HTTPS. You can only use SSH when you are a member of a project. So that is using your SSH keys, and is also requiring you to be part of this project here. So just use HTTPS. Everyone can do that for a public repository. You can copy this, or you can click this here, copy URL to clipboard. So we are going to do that. And then I'm going here to my window. And as you can see, it contains the files I created and added or staged. And I also committed them. Now I'm also going to download these files, but I think I'm not going to put them in this repository because it might just give problems to have it inside of a Git repository. So go out from it and then type git clone. And then we are pasting this URL here that we copied. So git clone and then this URL. And it is telling me it already exists because, of course, I already downloaded it. So I am going to create a temporary directory. You don't have to do that. It's just because I already downloaded the file. I'm pushing arrow up, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to show you git clone this URL, and I'm cloning it. And it looks like this. It will take a little while, more if it's a large repository. But you then get this directory here. I'm going to go into it. And here you see git_material.zip. I'm going to unzip it. It's inflating it. It created a directory, git materials. Under that, there will be a directory for each one of these modules. And under that are the exercises. But we will look at that later when we get to these sections here. There is not something under each of them. There is nothing under 0.setup because there was no exercise except for the one that we have just talked about. Okay. I will attempt to go back to where I was. I just need to this one. Yeah, as I mentioned before, there are web-based Git repositories. We are going to use GitHub. There is also GitLab. It's very common. It's many universities, many departments have one themselves. There is Bitbucket and there's SourceForge. There's also others, but these are some of the more common ones. And we are going to use GitHub. I will suggest that you go and sign up for an account at GitHub. You don't need to do it now, but we don't need it until Thursday. So, and this here, I'm not going to go through now because this I will go through on Thursday. So instead, I will look at the schedule on the web page, and I see that we have gone through intro and setup. So now it's time to use why use version management.